Hello, my name is James Taylor.
Hello from me, Maria Franzoni.
And you're listening to the SpeakersU Podcast. Just in case you've come here and you've been looking for a really cool podcast. This isn't a really cool podcast, but this is a useful podcast if you're an aspiring or professional speaker. Maria, what's been going on in your world just now?
I'm a bit upset that you said this isn't a cool podcast. I don't think I shall guest anymore if it's not a cool pod. I'll have to go elsewhere. Oh, sorry, that's my ego getting in the way there, James. Oh gosh, you'll see what I did there. Oh my goodness. I know. What have I been up to? More of the same, really, quite frankly. Nothing new to report. Scary how fast the year is going, though. It's galloping. How about you?
Yeah, very good. Is that time that we're recording this? It's in October just now, right in the thick of lots of events going on. And that's the busiest time in the UK, busiest month in the UK for events, busiest time in the US for events. Everyone's busy. If you're a speaker, you're probably busy. You probably don't have time to listen to this. Hopefully you've downloaded this episode and you're going to listen to it when you're on your run or out for a walk or when you're traveling somewhere. So let's talk about this topic for this week. What are we talking about, Maria?
Talking about ego. Yeah.
Ego. And I noticed, I had a little look. There was a book I happen to have on my bookshelf right here. You might know the author, one Dr. Maria Franzoni, called the Bookability Formula. And there is an entire chapter on ego. Why did you devote an entire chapter to this topic of ego for speakers?
It's crazy, isn't it, really, that you have to. So speakers need ego in order to get on the stage and do what they do. Absolutely. They do need to have that confidence. But when it moves into arrogance and a bit too much ego, it's a problem and it can destroy your speaking career really quickly. And the problem is, I don't know if you'll have experienced this. You don't have ego. You're fine. You're absolutely fine. You don't have to worry about this. But you're spoilt as a speaker. The red carpet is laid out. You are given lovely food. You're put in lovely hotel rooms. You travel business class or first class, and there's cars to meet you at the airport, and you're treated incredibly well. And for some, it goes to their heads, and then the ego steps in, and people behave badly. So yes, I dedicated an entire chapter because we have to contain that ego and not destroy the speaking business that you have.
So tell us give us an example of where ego has gotten in the way of a speaker, has made them, we want to be easy to work with as speakers. We want to be great at our craft of speaking, but we also want to have fun. We want to give value at the events that we're speaking at as well. When has ego got in the way? Give us some examples here.
I've got lots and lots of stories, but the one that actually probably is the easiest one for people to slip, for a speaker to have happen to them, is where they think that their speech is more important than the rest of the event. So that, and I've seen this happen, so that if something goes wrong technically, or something happens, or somebody else is overrun, the ego is so big that speaker's like, well, I've got a 45-minute speech to deliver, and I'm going to deliver it. It doesn't matter that there's been this problem or that problem or this other person's overrun. I'm delivering my 45 minutes, even though people got to go and catch their trains or they've got to go away. They're not paying attention to what perhaps the organizer needs or the audience needs. And that's the beginning. That's the beginning of the end. So if you find yourself doing that, don't do that. Don't go on and do your full speech if you can't and the timing's changed, and B, don't ever overrun and think that your time on stage is more important. You don't want to have that crook where you pull people off. That's a nice example of ego where it can go wrong. I've got some horrific stories as well for you, James.
Well,
I don't know if we might have to X-rate this particular episode.
Okay, we'll beep out the names of the speakers in question here, but I would say also this also blows back onto the rest of the speaker community. I did an event recently in the Middle East, and I was speaking on day 2. I was speaking on the morning of day 2, and they had a speaker on a keynote speaker on day 1, and I came in and maybe you felt this. So if you're listening just as a speaker, you come in and you feel the AV team, the technical team, are kind of against you right from the get go. And I'm like, oh, this is weird. Kind of weird energy and that was going on. And I just kind of go in. I'm kind of like, I want to be nice to everyone I meet, whether it's the person that's picking me up from the airport or the hotel staff or the client or the AV team. And I said, yeah, what's going on? How did it go yesterday? And they started slowly releasing their guard, dropping their guard. And what happened is they had a speaker in the day before who obviously had a massive ego and was an absolute pain for the AV team, but also was not great for the client either. And there was some challenges, and I actually I'm not going to say who the speaker was. I know the speaker, and I actually spoke to him afterwards about it, and he just said nothing was working for him on stage, and he was becoming a little bit tetchy on stage, also with the audience as well, and it just like it's not good. It's not good, and all that vibe, that energy was being transferred to the audience. So I would say that as a speaker, the one comment I often get is when I work with clients is they say, wow, you were so easy to work with. You were great. You did you went above and beyond the thing, and then you start to hear the stories of maybe other speakers who've not been as fun uh, to work with as well. So I feel like it's our responsibility as speakers to go in there to be champions for our craft, our industry, and to hopefully make it maybe more difficult over time for those with the bigger egos to operate in this business.
Yeah, and yeah, you're absolutely right. Being easy to work with is so important. But the thing is also, news travels fast. And I'm sure that, that organizer will have already gone back and told other people if they booked through a bureau, the bureau will know. The bureau will blacklist that speaker and not put them forward, and only book them now if they're asked for, because of the fact that, they've behaved badly. You can destroy your career so quickly.
I just thought that the topic for this there's the keynote, the title for this episode should be speakers behaving badly. So give us some other examples of speakers behaving badly, where their ego has got in the way of the assignment of the job.
Yes. So speakers behaving badly, some lovely examples. So this isn't too bad. Again, I'm starting slowly. We'll build up. So a speaker I worked with for many years, and this was accepted by everybody in the industry, big name, well known. Everybody wanted to book this particular individual, and he wouldn't do his own briefing calls. He was too important. So he used to get somebody else. I won't say who, because you might work out who it was. So you get somebody else to sit in and do the briefing calls. Now, from a client's point of view, often, especially if you book through a bureau, the first time you're speaking to the speaker, the first time you have any kind of relationship with them is on the briefing call, and you know that they've been told everything that's been agreed. And so now you're making that client really uncomfortable, because you're now talking to a third party who's not going to even be delivering it, right? So I said to this particular individual, I won't book you unless not only do you attend the briefing call, but actually you do the talking. Now, the other person can be on the call and ask additional questions and participate, but we're talking to you about your content, about your contribution. So that's something where, some speakers get so big that they won't do their own briefing calls. And my excuse to everybody, or my reasoning for everybody to say, look, if Neil Armstrong could do his own briefing calls, you can do your own briefing calls. That's the most famous man ever, right? So, well, maybe not, because people will write in and say, well, hang on, what about Jesus Christ and blah, blah, blah. Okay, but most famous speaker I ever worked with anyway.
The second most famous speaker anyway. And you have booked Jesus, right? Yeah,
I haven't booked Jesus, no. No, well, not knowingly. I might have done, you see, because where are we going with this? Yeah, so that's one thing too. Do your own briefing calls. Don't delegate things like that, because things like that are really important to the client. You do your own briefing calls, don't you, James?
Yeah, I do all because I also I love learning. So I treat the briefing call as a way. It's like getting a mini MBA on an industry or a field, and so I learn lots. And there's lots of things I'll pick up that I wouldn't necessarily use in the keynote itself, but I'll use maybe for a future event. Because I think, oh, well, that like I'm speaking to this industry, they're a little bit further on this thing here that I can maybe use in this thing here. So I think it's a great way to learn on briefing calls as well. And obviously you build a relationship with the client. So when you get there on the day, you've already built a rapport with that person as well. One thing I would say about the ego is, I think there's like what defines a speaker having ego can also be a little bit different depending on the sex or the gender of the speaker and how they're perceived, and also the culture that you're being perceived at. Because let's say, for example, I'm here in Scotland, and in Scotland, if ego, we have the kind of the tall poppy syndrome, like they have in lots of places around the world, that if you are perceived as being above yourself in some way, then they want to take your legs out from underneath you very, very quickly, and they will make that plain. That is the case. So if I'm speaking, I don't really speak very much in Scotland, but if I'm speaking in Scotland, I will use on stage, I will use a lot more self-depreciating humor than if I was speaking, let's say, in America, where a lot of the self-deprecation doesn't work quite as well. The other one I've heard sometimes, and I'm not saying that the client is wrong here, but I did some events in Latin America when they would, and I was talking to the organizer, and she was saying, and it was a female organizer, she was saying, women speakers, there's so much more work than booking male speakers. I'm like, well, tell me about that. And she kind of started listing some things, but I actually think, no, actually, that female speaker, she just has certain standards. That when she wants to speak on stage, she's invested so much in this keynote and her craft. She wants those, if she wants a headset mic because it's going to be easier because she allows us to use her hands. I actually don't think that's ego. I think that's someone that really cares about the craft. Now, obviously, if it's out with the client's budget or something, you can work from there. But there are some things I sometimes hear saying this speaker has a big ego, but I don't necessarily think it's that. I think it's actually because they really want to do a good job. And so they're going to request certain things. It could be a confidence monitor. It could be like the type of microphone that they have. It could be that, they get, if it's in a certain type of venue, they get a little bit of a green room or a space to get changed in, because there's no fun getting changed into a suit or a dress from a toilet stall, for example. And some people might look at that as ego. And I probably don't think that is necessarily ego.
No, that's a rider in your contract. I think that's the previous episode, James. That's
Yeah.
definitely not ego.
Okay.
No, 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 no. I think when ego gets away with it, it manifests in bad behavior. We're calling this episode "Speakers Behaving Badly." It's when somebody behaves badly. Let me give you some examples of ego. So this particular individual, I actually warned the client, because this is somebody that I would not put forward, because I'd had problems previously with this particular individual. And I said to the client, I'm warning you now, you will be in tears at some point during this event. Right? Isn't that awful to have to say that to a client? And she said, no, I'll be fine, I'll be fine. Anyway, she rang me after the event and she said, yeah, it happened. I said, okay, what happened? So, well, this person, the speaker, arrived at the venue, at the hotel, and arrived very, very late, last minute flight, arrived late so that then could do the first thing in the morning speech and then be straight out again. Arrived late, gone midnight, and she summons the client to her hotel room to make a complaint. Not to the hotel people, but she had to have the client person leave her home. This poor client person had been working all day that day, had a very long day, had young kids, really exhausted, turns up and is just screamed at non-stop by the speaker. And the problem was that the speaker didn't have a balcony, and she wanted a balcony with a view. This is midnight. She's going to be speaking first thing in the morning and she wants a balcony. I suspect in reality she probably was a secret smoker and wanted a balcony so she could go out and smoke, probably. But anyway, none of the hotel rooms had balconies. It hadn't been requested, wasn't in the contract, and she did make this poor woman cry. Awful. So that's ego. It's not necessary. That's just bad behaviour. Do you want another one? Let's have a
I'm just thinking, it just reminds me, and this is kind of maybe a little bit of a side, but I saw a company doing something I thought was really nice the other day with customer service, where before you get on the call with that, who you're calling your bank or whoever it is, they play a little short audio clip, and it's the child of the person you're about to speak to, and say, we're about to put you onto my mummy, Sue, and to help you with your problem. We really hope you have a lovely day. Thank you. And then when you get in to speak to the person in the customer service, you're going into it with a different kind of vibe. You're not going to be screaming at that person because you've just heard this person's child. I mean, there's a little bit of the kind of blackmail emotional side to it as well. But I do think, you're absolutely right. That person, when you're arriving at 10 o'clock at night, that person, that client, especially if it's an events company, they've been on site since 6 in the morning, and if you're going in and making lots and lots of requests, is not going to win you many friends.
No, not at all. See, now the child coming on for me wouldn't work because I'm allergic to children. If it was a photo of a nice puppy or something, which I don't know if you can do that on, or they're telling me that they've just got a new puppy and the name is, 6 months old and it's this breed and da, 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 and then it's like, hello, yes, you've got my attention. So kids don't work with me, Jan. I'm cold-hearted when it comes to children.
You're cold. You're cold. But I know you. I know often. You being an agent, you often get stuck in the middle of some of these things. You'll have your, in one way, you're there on behalf of the client. That is, the client is your client. That in person is booking, not the speaker. The speaker is, I mean, is a supplier of services. They wouldn't like probably to hear that phrase, but they are a supplier of services. So you're triangulating with this. And I heard one the other day from an agent said to me, he gets a call from this particular performer, and they're on like a bus from the airport, or like one of these kind of a car or something from the airport, and the performer, this speaker, says to the agent, um, I've just arrived. I'm at the airport, and I'm in the car going to the hotel. I need you to call the client, to call the driver, to tell them to put the air conditioning down. It's just a bit too cold. so, so yes, I mean that is ego. That is pure ego. Give me one more. Give me one that's just going to
I've got
knock our socks off.
Oh, knock your socks off. Okay. Well, I've got several, but here's one. This is a good one. So this is somebody who got so full of himself and his ability to deliver his speeches that he was speaking after dinner. And he arrived just in time for his speech. And he had clearly been imbibing before he had arrived. I think he'd been to a previous dinner, had a very nice time. So he wasn't entirely sober. But he poured himself a very large glass of red wine and started imbibing again just before he's then introduced. He goes onto the stage. He's got a lectern. He has got a lectern at this dinner. And he can't remember where on earth he is in terms of what's the event. I don't actually remember the event and who I'm speaking to. So he's looking around for any sign or any indication of what the event is. And very fortunately, behind him, there is actually some notes. And also there's something on the front of the lectern. So he's able to know where he is. And he just so disrespectful and delivers exactly the same speech as he had delivered at a previous event. Unfortunately, he got caught out because somebody in the audience had been at the previous event. It's just the thing is that person got away with it once and then that's it. You just don't book them again and they get a reputation and word spreads. It's not good.
I did notice that there is a feature on eSpeakers, kind of CRM that a lot of speakers use, where you can actually place in all of your jokes and stories that you tell for a particular event. So let's say if you go and do that event a year later, you make sure you don't repeat the same jokes or the same stories, which I mean, if you're doing that, makes sense. But actually, I think one of the first people that told me about that, this idea of actually remembering, in my case, I've got PowerPoints to be able to do that, but kind of remembering what you've said to previous audiences, was Pegeen Echevarria. And Pegeen is great. She actually had a theme song written for her when she goes up on stage, and it's really like fun. It's got energy, and it works really well. She speaks a lot to the military as well, and it's kind of, there's a whole thing around that, and it works really good. And I was thinking about her the other day because I did an event where the client had put together a little montage video, almost like a warm up for me for a minute. And it's like, James Taylor has done this. And, you've got the big voice in it and the whole thing. And now, even I was like, by the end of it, I was like, I feel really puffed up now, like going onto stage because they'd played this. And I thought, if that video was played in the UK or in Germany, in advance of me speaking, it would not be a good thing. Because it would be seen that even though the client had created it, it would be seen that I would have a big ego. So I think there's also cultural things going on here about how you represent yourself on stage and in advance of going on stage.
Absolutely, absolutely. And everything you do, actually, it's not just what you do on stage, it's everything you do around stage. In fact, the examples we've been talking about so far have been about behavior off stage, really important. Um, there's one thing that tends to happen at conferences, and I don't know what it is. People sort of forget their morals a little bit, and I don't know, it's because they drink too much or what. But we've had situations where speakers and clients have ended up in compromising positions, shall we say. And of course, that's
Mm.
fine with two consenting adults. It's not so good if a member of the client team isn't so happy. But I think you should keep that away from conferences. You shouldn't. There's a term in the
Yeah.
UK, and I don't want to use it because it's a bad word, but you shouldn't do a certain thing on your own doorstep, right? Don't do that.
I
So
have I've heard that story. I mean, I think events, maybe not in let's say internal company events, but I mean, I don't really do many association events, but where people are coming together, it's their one big thing of the year. They're away from home. They're maybe having a lot to drink as well at these events, and you do see it. I mean, I see it. As a person that's deliver there to be a supplier of a service of speaking on stage, and you see certain things, and you're like, oh, okay, fine, whatever. But I did an event recently where I was having coffee with the client in advance of the event, and she was telling me actually that one of the speakers that had booked a few years previously had done exactly what you were just talking about there. And it's just it's the ego thing, and I maybe it's also they say, was it pilots and air hostesses, like that's one of the highest cases of divorces as well. And I had a brilliant thing years ago. This is this is a morality ethics bit, I guess, from Zig Ziglar, who was probably like the godfather of motivational speakers in America. And I can't remember who told me it, but he had this thing when he said 5 times a day, 5 times a day. You should call home 5 times a day. Um, and for him, that was a case because he's up on these stages. He's been lauded. He was an amazing speaker, amazing guy. And it can go to your head if you're not careful. So by calling home 5 times a day, calling his wife 5 times a day, it would just allow him to have that check in. I mean, and I do it with my wife. And when I go into a hotel room, the first thing I do is I go on Zoom or WhatsApp and I show her around the room. Like this is where and it's just that having that connection to home base and kind of keeping you level, that you're there to do a job to the best of your abilities. You want to have fun when you're doing your job as well, but you're there in service of the client, and don't provide any additional services that aren't on the contract perhaps.
no additional services. Fantastic. I
There
like
you
that
go.
5 a day. I think that 5 a day is probably easier than doing your 5 a day vegetables sometimes. So that's quite
Yeah,
good. I like it.
absolutely. Absolutely. So let's give a final tip or tool of the week. What's it going to be for you, Maria?
Tool of the week. You better go first because I haven't thought of my tool of the
Okay.
week this week. I'm going to have to quickly think of one. Go for it.
I don't have a tool. I've got a tip of the week. And I just saw my nephew just spoke on stage at the Labour Party conference. So in the UK, Labour Party is one of our political parties. I'm not a Labour supporter, but that's a different thing. But he spoke on this, and I think he's 14, 15, and it was just great to see a young person kind of get up there talking passionately about something, and he was employing like little oratory skills that you would learn. So it was great to see that as well. But here's my little tip, and I think this is really useful. It's something I did many years ago, is stand for some type of elected office. It could be your
Mm.
community council. It could be the smallest, your school PTA. It doesn't have to be the big offices. But what's interesting about doing that, and I've stood 3 times, way a long time ago, for political office. And what is great about that exercise, you learn great oratory, how to go into a room and try and persuade and convince people to your own idea. You learn really good communication, how to build empathy with people, and also you get very used to going into a room where pretty much everyone in the room hates you, or wants to see you fail. And so and it's great for Q&A. So you get to very good at how to deal with questions, hard questions, and how to pivot to kind of getting to where you want to go. And I absolutely value, and I would suggest for anyone to just kind of do this, stand for something, some type of office, because it toughens you up a little bit. So when you do go on stage to speak as a professional speaker, to speak about something you're passionate about, where actually everyone in the room wants you to see you succeed, it's less of a hassle. It's less, there's less stress in it, because you've been in those rooms where 95% of the people in the room want to see you fail. So when you go into those rooms, which is most of the time now, if you're a professional speaker, where basically 100% of the people in the room want to see you succeed, it's going to be no problem for you. It'll build your confidence.
Fantastic. So I'm going to share a tool, and had I been more prepared, I'd have had it here to show you. So we might have to add a photograph afterwards. So apologies that all of those watching, those listening won't be losing out. So that's absolutely fine. So last week we talked about contracts. And one of the things you talked about was the fact that you will always record your speech so that you've then got the content, you can listen back to it, even if it's just on your phone. So there are two tools you could choose from. So I use a thing called Plaud, which is Plaud. And you could also, another one called Limitless. And these are little things that you can attach to like a lapel, or you can wear them on your wrist, or you can have them as a little necklace. And they're little recording devices. And they record, you turn it on in the morning and you can just leave it on all day. And then you can ask it at the end of the day, you can question the transcript and say, what have I agreed to do? Who have I agreed to go back to? Or you could simply put it on while you're speaking on stage and record all of your speech. And you've then got the audio recording of your speech, and you've also got the transcript. These are so good because you can feed the transcripts into an AI, and you can be creating your own agents and your own support there, or you could be training other people, but you can also use it for team members. So the one I have is called Plaud, Plaud, but there's also another one called Limitless, and they're just absolutely brilliant. So I use them when I go to conferences, so I don't have to take notes, and I can be there and be in the moment and in the conversations.
Those are great tools. Those are fantastic. And especially, as you say, because we're going to the age of AI, where maybe in the future, if you're doing lots of speeches, lots of consulting calls, you can be putting those in, and we could create AI Maria Franzoni. We could have, maybe that's coming soon. Watch this space. We're going to have
she might do a better job. She might do a better job. She'd do a better job, James, actually.
She won't be much fun.
Oh, I don't want to know.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for watching, for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you have a topic you'd like Maria and I to cover in a future episode, just drop an email to hello@speakersu.com. That's hello@speakersu.com. And from me, James Taylor, great to see you today.
And if you've enjoyed it, I've been Maria Franzoni. If you haven't, I've been James Taylor. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Imagine stepping onto stages around the world, sharing your message, inspiring thousands, and getting paid what you deserve. If you're a coach, author, thought leader, or consultant ready to build a global speaking career, listen up. Introducing the International Speakers Summit with James Taylor, where 150-plus pro speakers, trainers, and business coaches reveal the exact strategies behind launching, growing, and monetizing an international speaking business. You'll learn storytelling that moves, mindset shifts that scale, how to package and price your talks, and even get video, audio downloads, workbooks, and bonus content. All of this for just $97 with the VIP Pass, over 100 hours of premium, actionable content. Ignite your stage presence, amplify your voice, dominate the speaker marketplace. Go to SpeakersU.com and unlock your International Speakers Summit Pass today, because the world is waiting to hear you.
Why do some speakers get booked again and again, while others struggle to secure even one paid engagement? In the Bookability Formula, Maria Franzoni, former International Speaker Bureau owner, reveals what the top 1% most booked speakers do differently. She analyzed years of bureau data and discovered that just 1% of her roster generated 80% of the bookings. In this book, Maria shares the clear, proven framework any speaker can use to become commercially and consistently bookable. Get your copy now at mariafranzoni.me or alternatively on Amazon.